Kathrine Switzer has run over 30 marathons. Her professor husband, Roger Robinson, has been running for 30 years or so, not from Kathrine, but because of a great desire to compete and set a few records too. They are both elite athletes, authors, public speakers, and celebrities in marathon land. Kathrine is the first woman to officially run the Boston Marathon, much to the dismay of some of its male organizers. It is my pleasure to welcome Roger Robinson and Kathrine Switzer to Studio 4 to tell us more.
How nice to be here, Fanny.
How nice to meet both of you.
Great. You're a legend in your own time, so it's great to be
here.
Oh, dear.
You've been talking to the Clements.
I have.
Doctor,
yes,
doctor and chef.
Yes. Wonderful people.
Wonderful people and wonderful runners.
And wonderful cooks.
And Olympians.
Yes, and sports medicine.
Trainers of Olympians. And even last night he was urging me to do more exercises. To strengthen my knee replacement. Oh, he's absolutely relentless.
Well, I read that your knee has retired.
Yes, my knee retired some years ago, and actually then went away completely 2 months ago and was replaced. But all is fine. I can now bicycle and walk better than I've been able to do for 15 years, so that's good.
Well, if you couldn't, I suspect you would go through a bit of withdrawal, because the runners I know who can't run get a little crazy.
Yes. Yes. In fact, you're talking to the women before about depression, and actually, you know, running has been a proved antidepressant, and many people with depressives have been treated very, very successfully with running. We all know it gives you an endorphin high, makes you feel good and accomplished. It's really quite phenomenal.
Why did you start?
You know, you were teasing me a little bit about this before the show, and in fact, it was my mother who didn't like the idea of me being a cheerleader, but it was my father who said, actually, life is to participate, not to spectate. You should have people cheer for you. And that was astonishing for a little
line.
Wonderful,
absolutely.
wonderful for a 12-year-old girl to hear that from a rather conservative father. He said, "Come on, honey, you ought to get out there and run and make that field hockey team in your high school."
How great! Because there's something wrong with nations who sit around and watch other people do things, or maybe not.
Yeah.
And you, Professor Emeritus, at Cambridge. Where were you schooled? King's College.
King's College School in Wimbledon, and then Queen's College in Cambridge. Yeah, all on scholarships. No money in the family.
Athletic scholarships?
No. There's no such thing in England. No.
I didn't think so.
No, just very much for doing English literature. So that was the background. But then my father was he'd been a working class boy who got into school teaching after the war. But he loved sport. But he was an amputee. He'd lost an arm in a train accident, so he was a referee and soccer player, soccer referee and cricket umpire. So I grew up going to watch him. And so I grew up loving sport as well as intellectual and academic things. So the two went together.
So when you weren't reading James Joyce?
That's more or less it. Yes. I was watching Roger Bannister run a world record for the 3/4 mile, something like three years before he broke the world record for
We have
the
a
mile.
statue of him here somewhere in the city.
Oh, I've seen it. I've been out there to see him. That and John Landy.
And Harry Jerome.
One of the great races.
All of the great runners.
Yeah.
So how did you two meet?
Interesting story. Which version do you want, hers or mine?
Well, you choose.
I can do a short version, but we met on the speaking platform. And we met in Canberra in Australia. I was with the Avon Company in New York, organizing a global series of races. Roger was a professor from New Zealand, but a world-class runner. I was organizing this women's race in Canberra. He was running the men's part of the race, and we were the speakers the night before the race. Only I didn't know he was speaking. I thought I was going to be the speaker.
I see.
And she was a bit miffed, you know, to have this little, skinny little balded, you know, funny character with a funny accent, claiming to be a good runner. But anyway,
love at first podium?
No, love at first voice. That's what I always say. I fell in love at first voice. And also, it's really amazing. I spoke first, and I thought I was speaking wonderfully. But then Roger spoke, and it's like the beginning of a race when the gun goes off. You know when you're beat right from the moment. And as soon as he opened his mouth, I said, "This guy is awesome," and it was wonderful.
But it was the same mix. You know, I'm interested in the history of running and the philosophy, if you like, why people do it, what it means to them, what its social significance is, and that was the kind of thing I was talking about that night, as well as telling one or two versions of the Atalanta story and things like that, because I knew that she had this reputation for knowing about women's running, and I just wanted to put that into context. So it was great. And
I hear tell you have a reputation. You caused a stir in Boston. How many years ago?
43.
Really?
43 years ago. 44 years ago. Sorry, I'm quickly doing my math. Every year there's another year.
We do get older.
Yes, we do. It's well, in many ways it's like yesterday, because it was an event that changed my life so completely. And what you're referring to, of course, is me signing up, running the Boston Marathon, and being attacked by the race director at the 2-mile mark. And
only men in the marathon in those days? Is that how it worked?
That's
Could
how
women
it worked.
run along beside and support you, but not officially run?
Especially bad in America. Actually, it was especially bad, that restriction, and at Boston. There were one or two odd occasional women who had run marathons in New Zealand and England.
But not in America.
Not at Boston.
In Boston, a woman jumped out of the bushes the year before and ran the race. And my coach said, no, listen, you know, you've got to officially sign up. This is a serious competition. And we went through the rule books, and there was nothing about gender. It was really interesting.
Really?
It was assumed that a woman couldn't do it. And it was assumed that no woman in her right mind would want to do it.
Okay, like women were never doctors, supposedly,
exactly.
or lawyers, or all of that. We were nurses and school teachers. Or bus drivers, or plumbers.
But this was different. It was more that they're physically incapable, they're too fragile, and you might endanger yourself. I was told I was going to get big legs, grow hair on my chest, and my uterus was going to fall out if I ran a marathon.
You'd never have a baby.
Absolutely. But I thought that was nonsense. You know?
Well, how did you get in? Because Kathrine is a female name.
I signed my name with my initials. I see you have my book here. If you look at how my name is spelled, my dad misspelled my name on my birth certificate. He left the E out of Kathrine, and consequently my name was always misspelled. And I decided at 12 to start using my initials, because at 12 I wanted to be a writer, and I was in love with J.D. Salinger and E.E. Cummings and T.S. Eliot, and K.V. Switzer was cool. So when I signed K.V. Switzer on the entry form, they thought it was from a guy.
It was Kenneth.
Yes, or Kim.
Or Kim.
Yeah.
So you trained, and you're ready, and you start to run, and what happened?
There was one other coincidence that was amazing. It was snowing and sleeting, the worst day they've ever had in the history of the Boston Marathon. And so I couldn't wear my cute little shorts and top. I had to wear this baggy old warm sweatsuit, and I looked like one of the guys. I think the officials probably would have pulled me right at the start line if they'd seen a girl there. And but you know, when the race started, we were all wearing this gear. And 2 miles into the race, it was the press truck right in front of me. Was so excited because hair was flying, and they saw my bib numbers, and they were taking pictures, and it was a high mom moment. But the officials bus came alongside, and on that was a fiery race director named Jock Semple, who was
Scotsman living in Boston,
protecting his race. And they were teasing him on the bus and saying, "There's a girl in your race, Jock. She's wearing numbers." And he jumped off the bus and went after me and attacked me. Really, it was quite awful, actually. Grabbed me and threw me back and screamed, "Get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers!" and started pulling my numbers off.
And then what? And
then my coach screamed, "Leave her alone. She's okay. I've trained her." And he got me again like this and pulled me back. And with that, my boyfriend, who happened to be a 235-pound aspirant in the Olympic hammer throw, threw a cross-body block into the official and sent him out of the race instead.
Well, that must have taken a few minutes off your time.
It did. It did. I was, you know, it's like when anybody's out running or biking and a dog or something just runs out at you, you have this adrenaline rush, and then you go into a terrible trough afterwards.
I'm sure.
But it was a defining moment. It really was, because I decided to finish the race and was inspired by it eventually, rather than, I was radicalized by it also, but I was inspired by it to create change, and that, you know, predicated what I did for the rest of my life, which is amazing.
And both of you are very literate when it comes to writing about running. You're known as running scholars.
Yes.
If you don't mind.
Yes, just going back to that, one of the other key things is that the photographer just was right there.
Yes.
So that series of photographs, which were then used in Time magazine's 100 Pictures That Changed the World.
The Rosa Parks
of
right running.
Exactly, well, the photograph was right there. But yes, I've always believed that running sport is worth writing about well. It's really important to people, so why shouldn't it be written about as well as love or war or gardens or whatever else? So
or making movies. You had the Chariots of Fire and the great movies about running and sport.
You get a few great ones, yes, and it deserves good writing, and so that's one of the things I've tried to do in my writing career, is just write well about running.
And is there a book you love to read about runners or running, or a runner? Are there a few on your bookshelf that you think,
well, one is
everyone?
Roger's book, Running in Literature.
And I've written three or four, and Running in Literature is one. And I wrote one called Heroes and Sparrows, which is just coming out as a new 25th anniversary edition. And it has a final chapter, which is about my run in the Vancouver Marathon in 1981, which I'm here, of course, to celebrate the 30th anniversary,
30th
just as the
anniversary.
race is celebrating its 40th running.
And what is an ideal day for a marathon?
Cool.
Cool.
Yes.
The ideal weather for a marathon, as I wrote once in London, is that there isn't any. There isn't any weather. Cool, still, mild, not too hot, not too cold, no wind especially.
Altitude?
Oh,
Up, down?
Sea level.
Sea level. So
Yes.
we're looking good.
Vancouver's a good place. The day I ran it, I wouldn't say it was ideal because it was pouring rain and sleet coming down and water splashing up your shorts from the puddles on the road. So it wasn't ideal, but I came from Wellington, New Zealand, and so it wasn't too much trouble to me.
What about your first marathon? Your very first one? Did you hit the wall? Did you...
Well, Kathrine hit
a lot.
Jock Semple's.
Yes, you know, first, I just want to say how excited we actually both are to be here for the BMO Bank of Montreal Vancouver Marathon. It's really, really exciting, and we're going to be talking more at the British Sports Expo about a lot of these experiences, and we're welcoming everybody to come and ask questions such as, you know, what are the ideal weather conditions? What should you eat the night before the race? And
What should you eat the night before the race?
Well, usually pasta, something that's easily digestible.
Carbo loading?
Yes.
Something familiar.
Yes.
Something familiar.
Nothing, with all due respect to your Indian restaurants, I wouldn't go to an Indian restaurant the night before a marathon.
Because you would have to run off the track.
Exactly, yes. So something relatively digestible and non-exciting to your system. But just
Okay,
as simple
so a
as
little
that.
carbo loading.
Yeah.
What about the days before, the weeks before? How much running, how much training?
You taper.
You taper,
You know,
essentially.
you're going to run a huge race on Sunday. People are going to be cheering for you. You've done the training. You can't do any more the week before, so taper down and just kind of you've got it in the bank. So just
And what
be
about
ready.
pace? How do you know?
Well,
if
don't
fast
go too
starts-
fast. But the great thing these days is that running has established itself as a participant sport. It's about completing the course and not necessarily about high-level competition.
I love that.
We come from, exactly. Well, we
Yes.
come from a
Can you
somewhat
walk
different
the
background.
last few?
But just watching this
miles?
race when it started as the, whatever it was, the Lionsgate, British Columbia Marathon in 1971, 116, I think. No, sorry, 46.
Right.
46 runners. 2 women, 46 runners. When I ran it, it was the Vancouver International Marathon, just over 1,000, I think 1,600. Now, 15,000. And it is just
Incredible.
astonishing, the transformation of it. And those people are not all hoping to win, and they haven't all been training intensively like we did, like I did, doing interval training and 100 miles a week.
Sure.
They've just done a few jogs, and they're going to do it, and they're going to get this extraordinary sense of satisfaction and completion and taking on a challenge and fulfilling it. So it's one of the most amazing participant activities the world has ever seen.
And one of the most interesting social changes in this sport has been the number of women. Actually, on Sunday, the total number of participants, there are more women participating than men.
Really?
43% in the marathon, but 68% in the half marathon, and more, 66, I believe, in the 8K. So overall, there are actually more women participating on Sunday than men.
Well, I'm more
which
of a
is
social bee than I am a runner.
Oh.
But my friend ran in New York, and I thought, that sounds like fun.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It's
Even
huge fun.
even I could run a marathon
And
one day.
Everybody's saying even I, and people can do it, and the sport itself is absolutely welcoming. And that's one of the ways in which this BMO Vancouver Marathon was one of the pioneers. It was one of the first of the modern marathons to say we're not a championship, we're not just for specialized runners, we are open.
Okay.
We're a city marathon, we're a community marathon, and in all those ways running has become a real trailblazer for a
I
quite
love
new
that.
kind of social activity.
Well, I'll be waving at you.
That's good.
That much, and maybe I'll have some water on the side.
That's
and that will
another
be
part of
good.
it.
A big part of it, hydration, keeping
well, no,
it there.
Sorry, I was thinking spectators and also volunteers. Thousands of volunteers make these races happen. If we're talking about community, it's not just the 15,000 people who are doing it,
No.
which is remarkable. I mean, if 15,000 people were on the ice tonight playing hockey, it would be amazing. Every camera in town would be there. That's not what happens. They watch, but in running, they do it.
And you hear them, apparently, cheering you
Yes,
on.
the
We'll
runners
do
do.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Sunday, May 1st, the marathon. You have a speaker program going on, an alumni brunch, all of the above. I thank you. How nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. It's been a
Fanny,
pleasure.
lovely to
see
meet
you.
you. Thank you.
Roger Robinson and Kathrine Switzer.